Hello, welcome to Capes, Cowls, and Crusaders. I'm Kat, joined by Ernesto. How's it going?
Muy bien. Buenas noches, mi gente.
All right. So we're back.
Yep.
And seeing as this, yeah.
Hang on. Oop. Oh, I realized. Yeah, I pressed the SAP button. That's why I started sounding Spanish all of a sudden.
Oh, funny.
Dumb jokes.
Yeah. So since this is Capes, Cowls, and Crusaders, we get to start with some Batman news.
Man news?
Apparently, Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb are gonna reteam on Hush.
What?
Yes, it will be amazing.
Oh boy. I can't wait to see how long that's gonna take to come out.
That's the thing. It's like they announced it, and it's like, well, have they actually been working on it yet, or are they just? I'm not sure, because we know that before Tim Sale's death, he'd already been working on the new Long Halloween.
Yeah.
Going back 5 years now, so
yeah,
this might take a while. But here, this baby, the Hush Saga.
Now that's what I call an absolute collection.
Yes, the Hush Omnibus, but it's not. Of course, now with the news, it's not the entire Hush Saga Omnibus, but it's still pretty
Sometimes
awesome.
ideas just spring up and you just have to put them to page and pen.
Yes, that is definitely true.
It's a wonderful saga, all things considered, because a lot of seminal moments came out of that franchise, particularly the one that pretty much broke all of DC storytelling in a good way by pretty much putting Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne together as a couple, and at the same time revealing his identity to Selina. And that just shifted the whole narrative altogether. And then we had Heart of Hush, which kind of cemented that relationship as the de facto significant other to Bruce Wayne, being Selina Kyle. A lot of people of my generation grew up with the shipping of Batman and Wonder Woman with the animated series. But when you read the comics, at the end of the day, it is going to be Bruce and Selina, all the way. And I have to believe that the script for this sequel, which we can call it, has already been in the works for a while, because it's a lot easier to write comic book scripts than it is to illustrate them. Like if you follow like how the scheduling goes and how they have to go from writing the script to get it to the editor, for the editor to make some changes, and then while it's being edited, the artist continues to draw it, and then at some point they'll be like, hey, we got to change this page, they got to redraw a new page, and they all have to do that every month when it's a monthly or bi-weekly. So you can imagine the stress it has to go through to get a single comic book out of the gate. And with Jim Lee now having, head of DC on his plate, he's pretty much pulling double duty here. So I have to believe those scripts have been written for a while. It's just going to be a matter of how quickly can Jim Lee get the drafts done and how far along the process until they can actually start discussing release dates. Because what I don't want to happen is something like this deserves to come out consistently. And if you have those situations, which has happened in the past with great series, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it can kill the momentum. I remember when Doomsday Clock was coming out with Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, that comic took at least 2 years to finish because Gary Frank, all due respect, took so long to get one book out instead of coming out monthly. Like I think the first 2 books came out monthly, then the next book came out 2 months later, then the next one came out 4 months later. So it's one of those things where hopefully by the time, assuming this is like what, an 8-part, a 12-parter, by the time they go through the halfway, then you can start announcing, okay, here's the release date.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect to hear any projected release date until after the last Halloween is finished publication in June of next year.
And more than likely, they might want to release it in tandem with the Batman Part 2.
They might, and then even after that, once the last Halloween gets its hard, trade paperback, it's a collected edition.
It's a momentum at that point. They just have to be smart about the release at this point.
Yes, and speaking of when they want to release it, that leads me to my next bit of Batman news is that the Penguin is defying expectations by increasing viewership every single week. There was a 17% viewership increase between the first 2 episodes, 7% I think between 2 and 3, and then another 6%. And so it's been moving up, but by single-digit percentages, it's still very impressive. And there's now whispers that they might do another season, but I take it that wouldn't be until after the Batman Part 2, which is supposed to start filming sometime next spring. Let's hope it does stick to schedule.
Yeah.
And so if that show gains momentum, particularly once The Last Halloween finishes in June, which is around the time you're going to get Emmy nominations coming out, and people expect the Penguin should be up for quite a lot. So if they win some Emmys, that could be in September. That could be some more momentum to build.
If this show wins Emmys, then like the film series quality, whether the Batman gets any accolades or not, it really just promotes prestige storytelling that HBO is known for their prestige series, but B, that kind of success will tip over into the film, and then if the sequel is a success, then the next show, whether it's a sequel to the Penguin or another spinoff, will also receive that level of praise. And it shows that the weekly schedule still works. It builds momentum. It gets the word of mouth. I mean, it's kind of difficult for me with my job and where I'm located to get a good phone signal. So I'm never really checking what the trending moments are day to day. But if the numbers are going up, then a lot of people are engaging, and they might not watch it the night of, but it's going to trickle down eventually until the next episode.
Yeah, in the beginning, I wasn't. Well, other than the first episode, because it dropped on a Thursday, I hadn't been watching them on the day of, usually a couple days later. But yeah, I think the viewership record was not just for the night of, but also measuring over the week as well, in tandem with because it's also being shown on HBO's TV channel simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so that's really impressive that's able to build, viewership while you're simultaneously dropping it on Max. Like, they don't make you wait a couple days from the TV airing, so that's pretty good.
And it's also a testament to the show that in the time that we've been reviewing it, we're constantly throwing out theories, what we think is going to happen next, and then all of a sudden you get to the episode, and everything we've been theorizing, at least up until this point, has kind of been turned on its head. So that also adds to the increasing interest, because you think it's going to go one way, to go somewhere else, and you're just like, oh shit, what's going to happen next?
And assuming that the Penguin, say, does get Emmy nominated, even if it doesn't win Emmys, if it gets a lot of Emmy love and you have momentum from there, and assuming the Batman Part 2 does stick its production schedule, then we could be seeing a teaser trailer as early as next October.
Of course.
For the Batman Part 2, and I would expect the first trade paperback collected edition of The Last Halloween to be out by maybe December 2025 in time for Christmas.
I wouldn't be surprised if we get a comic book tie-in like the Riddler comic book that came out.
Yes.
Was it last year?
I believe he actually started publishing it in August or September of 2022, which would be a few months after Batman. But I got that one right here, actually.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we get like a version for the Penguin that might not be co-written by Colin Farrell, but it might be co-written by either the writers of this show, or maybe like a prologue by writer and director of,
Yeah, look at this cover after you take off the dust jacket. That's just excellent for a hardcover.
Oh yeah, that carries the same tone and
it did.
The pungentness of what the Riddler, of that version of the Riddler, is.
Have you read this comic yet?
No, not yet. Eventually, I hope to read it. I'd like to, buy it when I get the chance. Once I start collecting the comic books that I'm missing to finalize my physical collection, then I'll probably pick it up. Because I think once I do that, any other comic book that I may or may not buy are going to be one of those maxi series that aren't really inheriting or shackled to the continuity. It's just, like the Hush sequel. I would totally buy that monthly if it comes out consistently.
Are you gonna do that for the last Halloween?
I'll probably just buy the issues after it's run, regardless of how much each one costs.
Yeah, I found a website where right now they're like $4.50 or $5.
Oh yeah, it's fine. So it's not really that big of a deal as far as momentum.
Yeah, the one I can't find in stock anywhere right now, online or elsewhere, is the Prologue comic.
Yeah, it'll resurface. They always do. No matter when you least expect it, a book that you think has been out of print or is out of stock, it's always going to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you just have to be careful for the price gougers. There's always one.
Oh yeah, I was looking at even the variants covers for the last Halloween are like really. Some of the variants are pretty cool. You got like the villains or whatever, and even Robin and one of them holding up their for their mugshots. And I thought, man, that looks pretty cool. But the variants are always more expensive than the regular.
Oh, yeah. I used to collect the variants for certain books, not because I didn't like the original cover, but all of a sudden somebody would just post this magnificent cover art. I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna double dip, but I am gonna take the variant over cover A, basically.
Yeah. So I guess we should jump into the Penguin then.
We could, or we can just have a little bit more comic book talk.
We could, absolutely. Oh, and say hello real quick to Angry Space Marine Infinity. Hello.
Why so angry, Space Marine Infinity? Did you not get your greens? I mean, you have to be angry for some reason. No, we are therapists here, after all.
Oh, here's something else I got that's Penguin adjacent. I was
Yes.
at a costume shop last week, and I got a cane with I mean, it's not a penguin, but it's like it was in the Plague Doctor costume section, but it's actually a nice cane.
We will accept it. We will accept it as a penguin cane.
Yes, it's a penguin cane. No,
If you can
top hat, put that on.
Yeah, if you can rig it to become a weapon, by all means.
No, it does unscrew, so I can. Yeah, that's a good question. Why does it unscrew? I don't even know why. I didn't even think about that. I let's see what it is.
You could put a blade in there.
Yeah, I guess it's hollow on the inside, so it
So you do have an idea.
Yeah.
And if it's lead, nobody will be able to see through it. Aha! There's a little bit of comic book lore.
Yes, even better.
It's not Batman news, but it is rocking the comic book world. Blade has been put on indefinite hold.
Oh, that's the MCU Blade, yeah.
Yeah,
which in industry speak means it's probably not going to happen.
Exactly. After 5 years since it's been announced, the only thing this character that has not been reintroduced, we have now had two things that we can basically use to make fun of it officially. Number one, the only appearance of Mahershala Ali as Blade is in the post-credit scene of the Eternals. And two, Wesley Snipes.
You don't see him.
Well, you don't see him, you hear him.
Yeah.
And two, Wesley Snipes feels pretty good about himself right now after that. There's only ever going to be one Blade.
Yeah, Deadpool just breaks the fourth wall looking right at the camera as if to make...
Yeah, because that joke could have worked one of two ways. Either we still get the Blade movie and it jokes on him, or we don't get it and then jokes on them.
Yeah, and this is another one of those problems where it's like they're worried about whether or not I'm sure the problem has more to do with getting it to fit in the overall big picture Marvel plan than it has to do with finding a good Blade script, which is, again, just because you have a shared universe doesn't mean everything has to be tied in. Like, again, we should do Elseworlds shit for this. Like, even Tom Holland said the other day that he read the script for Spider-Man 4. He said it was really good, that he and Zendaya were really giddy reading it. It still needs a couple polishes, but he said it's going to be a Herculean task to get it done in the time that Marvel needs it done, because you always have to worry about making it fit into the larger story. And it's like, well, that's a problem, because if you have a good script, don't rush it and screw it over just because you want it to fit in the, wherever something drops on the damn timeline, rather than letting it be its own thing.
Yeah, and you would think after everything that happened in the last 2 to 3 years, it would have been like, okay, let's slow down, let's not rush this. But at the same time, it's like a damn if you do, damn if you don't. And so far, this is the first real, I think, with the exception of the Marvels, because that was a big pie in the face. This one really blew up in their face because it's been. I mean, we've seen in real time all the production issues with different directors, different writers, and rumors behind the scenes. Rumors that Mahershala Ali was pretty much furious that everything is being delayed, and he's had to say no to a lot of projects because he's been tied to getting this thing done. I mean, right now he's working on Jurassic World, but I don't blame the guy for being mad, but at the same time, it's like, get it together, man.
Well, I think Marvel's the one who needs to get it together because he's.
No, that's what I mean. Marvel, get it together.
Yeah, he's just. And then I hear he was upset because initially the script wasn't even going to be very Blade centric. He's like, that's not what I signed up for.
Oh yeah, because of the daughter angle. Yeah, even I was like, hey, if you're gonna make a Blade movie, make a Blade movie. Don't do this switcheroo that you guys have been doing lately.
Yeah.
Just because you guys did it in the comics doesn't mean we're gonna like it in live action. There's a reason why 12 months into the Marvel Now initiative, they had to backtrack every single decision they made in that 1 year.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Tony Stark was not around. Miss Marvel was now, I mean, even though her comic book series was fantastic, Miss Marvel was not Carol Danvers. Now it was Captain Marvel. The Hulk wasn't the Hulk. Everything was turning. It's like, bro, what are you doing? This is too much change too quickly. And that's pretty much it as far as comic book news. We can just jump into the Penguin.
On the DC side of things, after let's see, 1, 2, almost 3 weekends of release, Joker Foley Ado has only made $192 million against a near $200 million budget.
Ooh,
and it's been pulled from most theaters. It's only got one showtime at each of my local theaters, which is
going to hit digital at the end of the month now.
Yeah, October 29th, and that's just geez. And I mean, Warner Brothers keeps throwing the blame on Todd Phillips, and it's like, yeah, him putting out that statement that I'm divorcing myself from DC, now I'm done, is really lame and reads as you made a bad movie and you're abandoning it. But
yeah,
Warner Brothers has enough egg on their face. It's like, dude, he mentioned repeatedly during the press junket of the first movie that he didn't want to do a sequel. It's like, this is what happens when you try and force a sequel to something that doesn't need one. And that's your own fault for doing it. And I hope it doesn't kill the DC Black Label.
I hope it doesn't either, because the beauty of the Black Label is that you have an avenue to tell stories that, even though James Gunn is getting his DCU ready to go for next year, the Black Label is an out to tell stories that you might not want to put in the DCU, but you might be able to be like, here are the keys, don't do this, don't do that, but everything else, you're good to go and do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. So,
yeah. I could totally see like a Black Label of any other character from DC property. You just like, if it's not going to be the character themselves, since Joker really has nothing to do with Joker, at the end of the day, you can do something else. You can make a Constantine movie with Keanu Reeves and make it a Black Label movie. Because I don't know if we're going to get a Constantine proper in the DCU, but if you really want to do that rumored sequel with Keanu Reeves coming back to the character, you can make that a Black Label movie.
Yeah.
Just another example of what they can do. So yeah, I agree. I hope it doesn't kill it. But at the same time, that's the nature of the beast. What can you do?
Well, without further ado, time to jump into the Penguin 5th episode.
Ironically called Homecoming this episode.
And it feels like a homecoming after last week. We get back on track and get the momentum.
Yes, we do.
Get that momentum back. So as I joked in the last review, how Penguin drove off into the 5th episode. We begin this with a little bit of a flashback where we get to hear the conversation that we didn't get to hear last time, where Nadia basically accuses Oz point blank of killing Alberto. And Sophia's like, what? And so Nadia's like, yeah, don't you know what this guy's up to? And calling bullshit on it, saying she's taking over his, shroom operation. And so he gets rescued and they drive off into the night. And she ends up calling, as we know, she called Julian Rush, and that's how she got away. So Penguin and Victor, Penguin quickly makes up with Victor. He doesn't chastise him at all for leaving him. He's like, no, you made the right call. You came back. You risked everything. You saved me. And they dump the car in a dumpy part of town and burn it. And then Penguin's henchmen show up, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a little bit of a setback. It's not a big deal, but we got things going. Let's go." And he takes them all back to his place.
I think it's adorable because Victor is apologizing for ruining the car, and
Yeah.
then he's telling him, "Nah, it's okay, man. He's basically telling him it's just material things. Don't worry about it." But then here comes his goons, and they're like, "Boss, your car!" Like that car gets more respect than anybody else on this show. God damn it!
Yeah, and he takes him back to the house, and he's talking about what their plan's going to be. And his mistress is there, and she's not really happy with Oz because she, of course, was at the nightclub as well when he was handing out the free samples of the bliss. And she kind of takes it up with him, saying, "Man, you shouldn't be jeopardizing my girls that way." He's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's going to be okay." And he tells everybody else, "Here's the deal: we need some leverage, and we're going to go get Maroney's kid." And they actually pull up like a TikTok video of Maroney's kid doing this stupid wannabe gangster shit where he's flaunting it basically. And it's like,
and that is accurate. I can totally see a Zoomer child of a gangster do shit like that.
yes. And so he says, "We're gonna go take care of that." And so the next day, you see the Maroney's kid Taj is at some tattoo parlor. He's listening to music and not paying attention, and you see Penguin out of focus coming in, and they're just guns ablazing, getting rid of his entourage. And it takes a considerably long time for Taj to realize that he's got to run like hell. But they quickly
noise canceling audio headphones are no joke.
Yeah. Victor pulls Taj off the fence, and they beat him down. They're like, "Yeah, we got him," that kind of thing. And it's also funny that when Victor, it wasn't so much just that Victor had been apologizing about the car. He's like, "Yeah, I want to be here," and he was like being like aggressive, like, "Yeah, I want my piece." He wants a piece of it, and it's like, okay, you're going down that path, as we see later through this episode. So they've got Taj as a hostage, and I'm like, what a surprise! Alberto was a bit of a washed up kind of party boy jerk, and so is Maroney.
Yeah.
Or Maroney Jr., I should say. So there we go.
By the way, there's a running theme here that, you can probably say, with the exception of Sophia, children of mob families are fucking jokes. Like, they are jocks. They do not know the world they are supposed to inherit. They are spoiled. They are brats. It's like they're like billionaire kids. They're spoiled. They're brats. They have no idea what they have in the palm of their hands. And you can always imagine the parents in the background, like, if I want to just grab you by the ear and just rip it off your head for your insolent behavior.
Yeah, which is why it's like I can't really get behind these characters, at least the dipshits. But so after they've kidnapped Taj, Penguin goes to Blackgate, and Nadia is there with Salvatore, and they're very angry with him, saying, "You don't kidnap family and use them as leverage. That's like against the rules," type thing. And he's like, "Well, if you trade me my stuff back, maybe we can make a deal." And they're and Salvatore is just fuming, but there's nothing he could do. And he kind of cedes to Nadia to make the decision. And so she's like, "Okay, we'll do the trade." And as Penguin is leaving Blackgate, he sees the news report that a bunch of Falcones are dead in an apparent gas leak. And we go over to the Falcone estate. The bodies are being lined up outside. And Sophia is not pretending to be upset about it at all. She sent her niece off to like a boarding school or foster care or something like that.
And we have a cameo appearance.
Yes, we have Con Neal reprising his role as the Gotham City police chief.
Good fucking God, man. Get a lozenge.
Yeah, that very...
like, Jesus Christ, every time he talks, I'm like, my God, man, it's like, your family. I'm like, Jesus, somebody get this man a lozenge.
And he basically calls bullshit on her because he doesn't believe that this was a gas leak. She didn't make it look like one.
Yeah.
And she retorts that, well, be careful. You're kind of out of your jurisdiction, aren't you? You're from the city. And he's like, yeah, well, the mayor-elect Bella Real says we're supposed to has made it a mandate to crush all of these crime families like you. Mm-hmm. And she implies that he may have been on the take to try and intimidate him. And because he doesn't have evidence or anything, he kind of leaves her be, but he's still suspicious. And I don't know. I mean, the movie didn't make it seem like he was necessarily corrupt. He was just upset at Batman because it's like, we were sending in our bomb robot to deal with the bomb caller. You went in there and played right into the Riddler's hands and got the Coulson killed.
But would you be surprised if he were?
Right, and I wouldn't be surprised necessarily. So I'm not sure if he was. Maybe he might have been on the take, because after all, he's already heading way outside his jurisdiction on the behalf of the mayor to deal with this problem.
Not only is he outside his jurisdiction, but really, you're making house calls now?
Right, and I think it's probably more to do with the fact that he's probably familiar with a lot of the Falcone operation, being from Gotham, where all their shit goes down.
Well, the previous commissioner was dirty, so he probably would know.
Yeah, and I guess given how the short period of time the show is taking place over, they're not gonna find out the true source of the gas leak. Because when you say it's a gas leak, it's like, well, you're gonna have to rip up the gas lines through the entire house to find out, because obviously there was no gas leak.
All that was missing was for him to make a reference to an old TV show about really a gas leak. Okay.
Yeah, and it makes sense, I guess, that they're only searching the house because Sophia, after the coroners have taken away most of the bodies, she goes into the basement of the Falcone mausoleum, where she has Johnny Vitti gagged and chained and all that in his boxer shorts and his wife beater shirt, and he pleads with her and he says, "Oh, your mom was gonna run away. I had the car ready." And she's like, "Oh, you're desperate and lying." He's like, "Why would I lie?" I'm like, "You have every reason to lie at this moment. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, at least we know why she kept him alive. But then after all, you're just gonna be like, "No, seriously, why are you keeping him alive?"
Right, and he's just kind of, and he's trying to plead with her, and she decides, "Oh no, I have other uses for you." Meanwhile, back at Penguin goes back to his apartment, and all his crew are all upset and they're worried because the Falcones are dead. He's like, "Hey man, Sophia took the bait and it's fine. They were never going to make any of us made men. We were just going to be their grunt workers. That's done. I say it's our turn to take back what's ours." And he reassures them that everything's going to be all right. And so he's like, "Come on, kid, let's go. We're going to go to the." He's like, "Let's go," and they're going to go to the meetup to trade for the shrooms, while Victor gets excited to come along, but then Penguin's like, "No, you need to go get my mom and get her somewhere safe," and that upsets Victor because he feels that's kind of being put on babysitting duty and not being respected enough, having just saved Penguin's life. So it's like the kid's already getting kind of cocky in a way.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those situations where it's just like, "Hey kid, kind of pull it back a bit."
Right.
You just started.
Yeah. So Penguin goes to the meet at some warehouse, and Nadia's like, "You bring my son." I was like, "Okay." So they bring his son out of the back of the car, and he's just wearing his long pants and shoes. He's cuffed behind his back, and his ankles are cuffed together.
And he's very, very, very wet.
Yeah,
which
he's
is kind of like a supporting character in this episode, because Johnny Vitti was very wet in the previous scene.
Yeah, he's sopping wet, and he's got a gag at his mouth, and he's like, "I'll give you your son when you show me the shrooms." And she's like, "They're in the truck." And he's like, "Okay, Ray, get in the truck." And she's like, "No, not until you give me my son." He's like, "Okay." So he cuts the kid's cord. He's like, "Okay, go over to her." So he goes over to her, and she hugs him, and then they're about to get in the truck, but of course Nadia did not follow the instructions to not bring a bunch of guards, and so they show up in the rafters and start firing, and Penguin guns him down pretty easily. And because she broke the rules, he's like, "Well, you're done." So he gets out a match and lights it, and we realize that Taj was covered in gasoline, and now Nadia's covered it because she was hugging him. And so he just flicks it like in slow-mo down, it catches fire, and Nadia and Taj go up in flames.
And I'm convinced he would have roasted them either way.
Oh, of course.
Because considering that the majority, if not, with Sophia being the only family member left up to that point, he's changing plans as it goes along. Like if something happens over there, he's going to react to it, basically.
Yeah.
But I love this scene because of like, God damn, Oz, you are heartless, but it's in line with the character. He's really descending into that abyss that he's really not going to be able to climb out of it. It's like, on the one hand, you sympathize. On the other hand, Jesus, man.
Oh, yeah, he needs to do it because
he needs to. It's dog eat dog out there. But the only negative I have in this scene, the only negative is just like, really? You don't smell that, Nadia?
Yeah. And while this is going on, his henchman Mikey goes to Maroni's cell, and he's like, "Hey, courtesy from Oz," and he just knifes him with a shiv right in the gut. And meanwhile, Penguin, the downside of having set Nadia and Taj on fire is that it triggers the automatic fire extinguishers in the building. And so he's like, "Get in the truck, quick! We got to get out of here!" So they all jump in the truck and they take off, crashing through the doors and drive away. And as they're driving off, he gets a phone call. He's like, "Oh, Mikey, give me some good news." And he's like, "Bad luck." It's Salvatore saying, "Oh, bad luck, Oz. I've killed your guy, and now I've got the keys."
Yeah.
And this is the part I was a little confused by. It's like, Mikey was, I believe, was he in the apartment with Oz and infiltrated Blackgate, or was he already in Blackgate? Because he's got the keys, apparently, like a skeleton key, I guess, to get out.
Mikey Stone?
Is that who it is?
Yeah, Mikey Stone. I think he snuck in.
Because it's like, I'm thinking about this, and it's like, wait a minute. So we saw in previous episodes that Salvatore's obviously got some of the guards on the take, because he's got a big entourage, he's got contraband, all that kind of stuff. But he doesn't have enough money to bribe his way out of the jail, but this kid sneaks in and gives him a skeleton key, and he just walks out the door. That just felt a little contrived. It felt like something that the Maronis shouldn't have had any trouble putting together themselves.
I think it's one of those situations where if you just accept it, he probably snuck in. Somebody got paid off for him to take his shift and gave him the key card, probably faked the ID and everything. And since a lot of people in Blackgate turn an eye for whoever pays them the most, I'm assuming that's what happened.
Yeah, because that was, I thought, a little odd that, oh, that's easy. Why didn't you do that yourself, Sal? I'm sure you guys got enough money to bribe somebody.
Yeah, again, there are some things you just have to either accept or let go because we're going to be stuck on this for a while.
Yeah.
Again, Nadia, how could you not smell that?
Right. And so Penguin and his guys drive the truck with the drugs back to, over by the docks, and they pull the tarp off of them, and they see that most of the mushrooms were exposed and have been killed by the fire extinguishers. And there's only 2 buckets that are any good because they had the lids on. And so Penguin's like, "Get him in there and turn on the heater, crank up the heat. They need to be taken care of." And Penguin's just pissed off because he's lost like the majority of all the mushrooms, and he doesn't know what they're going to do. Yes, the shrooms. Meanwhile, Victor he goes to Francis's house, and he has to remind her who he is because she's got dementia. And he's like, "Oh, we're gonna get out of here. We need to go." And she's like, "What happened? Don't bullshit me on this." And he's like, "Oh, the Falcones, they've all been killed, and we got to go." She's like, "Was it Oz?" And he's like, "Don't bullshit me." And he does a favor for Oz, and he lies and says that Oz did it, thinking that, because again, he feels like he's being disrespected by being sent on babysitting duty. So he figures, oh, if I can get her to appreciate Oz some more, then that'll, maybe bump me up. And like, he doesn't realize that being trusted with Oz's mother shows how much trust and respect he actually has for him.
Yeah. And you know how we keep theorizing that something might happen? This episode kind of starts teasing that something is going to happen. And I'm already playing it in my head. I'm like, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, how stupid is Victor? Because he gets her in the car, and Penguin said, "Look, take her somewhere safe." And I'm sure Penguin had some money in all those little mini, those safe deposit boxes in his room, like some, rainy day money to give Victor to take his mom somewhere. But, you could just leave Gotham if you want to, go to some hotel somewhere in Jersey or something. No, he decides to take her to Crown Point, which is the worst rundown neighborhood in all of Gotham. Supposedly, it's the one that got hit the most by the flood, but there's no evident water damage at all. There's just a lot of trash everywhere, and it looks dry. So it's like, okay, it's a little contrived. Because it's still only 10 days after the flood, and it's like, oh, there's no evidence of flood damage. But it just looks like a rundown ghetto. And so he parks the car, and no sooner than he gets out of the car with her, and she's only taken like a lamp with her, and the first thing he sees is Squid, who is a character from the comics who has a pet giant squid. And in the comics, after Rupert Thorne got defeated, Squid kind of took over, and at one point he feeds Batman to his giant squid, and Batman barely escapes. So, I don't know, I guess another deep cut for comics to have the
character again. You kind of broke up earlier.
Squid? Lawrence, Squid. Lawrence, something with a T, his last name.
No, I know. I'm sorry. It's just that Sometimes I gotta keep track of some of these names. Yeah, Jared Abrahamson plays Squid.
Yes, and Squid actually spots Victor taking Francis inside this apartment. She's like, "Where are we going?" He's like, "Oh, it's an old buddy's apartment of mine. I'll be fine." And they get in there, and she just figures this is just dank and horrible compared to her house. She's like, "It reminds me of where I used to live with Oz and the boys." And he gives her the room with the big, queen size bed or whatever, and he puts her to bed, and he thinks everything's kind of fine. And I'm like, "God, you idiot!" It's like, why are you? It's like, no, this is a stupid idea. He's like, "We need to get off the street." It's like, "No, you need to get her back in the car and drive out, drive elsewhere." So meanwhile, back at the Falcone mansion, Sophia is hosting a meeting with all the other survivors and all the enforcers and everything, and Johnny Vidi's sitting next to her. And she's like, "Well, first things first, I'm the one who killed everybody." And they're all kind of shocked. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm running the family now. And, they never really respected you anyway." And she gets out the big bag of money that Vidi told her how to find, which is the reason she kept them alive, because she needed to know where they kept the rainy day stash. And she just sits it all down there. She basically says, "Yeah, I'm taking over the family now. The Falcones never respected you. You worked for all this money. You didn't get any. And we're no longer Falcones. We're Gigantes, my mother's name. And I'm taking over." And Johnny's uneasy about this. He's like, and he's resisting and all that crap. And she didn't want to hear that shit. So she just pulls out a gun and shoots him dead right then.
Yeah.
And that was badass. And
that is one of those moments where I'm like, I guess the cold water she threw on you did not shrivel those cojones of yours from a few episodes ago. And I'm like, that's going to get you killed. And whoopsie.
That's right. She did douse him with cold water. And he just, seriously,
how does this guy not know when to shut the fuck up? How does he not know when to shut the fuck up?
Because he thinks she's still crazy and he's an idiot.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, and so then she just throws the money and dumps on the table, and she's like, "Go ahead, that's fine." And then they all start reaching in and getting the money, and so it's like, "Oh, this is like a new day. Here we go."
And this is the day where the Falcone name died and the Gigante name rose.
Yes, she then goes out to this cabin in the woods where Salvatore is hiding out, and Salvatore. Having called Penguin to tell him that, "Yeah, I'm out and you fucked up and your guy's dead and everything, and I'm coming for you," and that type of shit. He's like, "Well, you might want to call," and Penguin has got some cojones as well. He's like, "Well, you might want to call your wife and son and see what they're up to." But I think they're 6 feet under now, whatever he says, and it just breaks Sal. He's just practically a shell of his former self and just absolutely devastated. And later that night.
Sometimes the only way you can hit someone hard is by taking away the one thing they truly love.
Yeah, and
because all things considered, he's a monster in his own right because he's a crime lord.
Yeah,
but he took his wife and son. That'll fuck him up
for sure. Oh yeah, DJ Play Nice, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming. So Maroni's got a guard standing outside his cabin, and we hear a gunshot go off. Thanks thank you so much for coming, DJ Play Nice. Appreciate it.
I'm here.
And Ernesto's here, yes. And we hear gunshots, and then Sophia walks in because she just killed the guard outside, and she's got an enforcer, and Salvatore's like, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, and she sits down and she's like, "Sal, I'm not here to kill you," and she's like, "The one thing I think you Maronis understood better than us is you knew to respect your own and look after you. The Falcones, they're shitbag. They didn't respect me or none of that type of stuff." And I can't remember, did she tell him that she killed all? I don't think she told him she killed all the Falcones, but
no, she wouldn't just blurt that out.
Yeah. Oh, see, he gives you a shout out, El Pinguino.
Hello. Yeah, no, she's pretty much just let me come down to your level, Sal.
Yeah. And she's like, "Look, I do appreciate the way you guys respect family more than Falcones," but she's like, "I'm not Falcone." He's like, "You're still a Falcone. I can't trust you." She's like, "Sal, I'm not here to kill you, and I'm not Falcone anymore. I'm Gigantes. And a long time ago, I was betrayed by my driver and sent to Arkham for a decade, and that same person has now killed your wife and son. He's your enemy now as well. And he's like, well, then what do you want? She's like, I'm proposing we team up to take out Oz and take the city back. We'll do it together. It's like and I'm reminded of Prop Joe with his New Day co-op on the wire. It's like, yeah, let's all cooperate instead of killing each other for a change, and we'll, make things work. And Sal seems to be receptive to this idea because he's not interested in fighting a mob war, and he's not really in any condition to do so. You could tell he's physically still a bit off from getting knifed. And he obviously wants to kill Oz desperately, as she does as well. And I believe her, and it's like, okay, now we're back in the mix. Later that night, Penguin goes to his mistress's place to pick her up because he wants her to run away with him. And she gets mad at him. She's like, Oz, I told you not to involve us in your bullshit. And she's like, I'm not going with you. And he gets upset and he starts breaking things and throwing a tantrum. And she's like, look, Oz, I'm just going to hold you back. But you could tell she's just saying that to try and make him feel better. And he's really not having it. And she's like, look, I told you not to jeopardize me and the girls. And now you got us involved in this. And it's just getting worse. And I'm not going with you. I still love you, but I am not going with you while you're doing all this bullshit. I'm not getting dragged into this any further. And he's pissed off, but he still loves her, so he lets it be. And so it's like things aren't exactly going his way very well. Having lost most of the mushrooms, his assassination attempt against Sal failed, and he's smart enough to know that Sophia is going to be coming for him as well. So things aren't going very well.
This episode, this whole season so far, and to an extent, being a spinoff of the Batman, every action has a reaction. And actions have consequences, and each episode is basically like, this is what happens when you take this route. And every time he thinks he's one up someone, he's losing something else, and it's killing him on the inside. And it's, considering everything he did in this episode, I think each episode is showing that whenever he has to suffer some type of displeasure, like in this case is his girlfriend is not going to go with him because of her own reasons, it's hurting him. And he's going to take this as pain, even though he doesn't hold it against her, but he's going to channel that, and he's going to hurt someone else even worse than the last person he hurt. So,
yeah. So he goes to Crown Point, to the apartment, and he sees Victor asleep, and he goes into the next room and he sees his mother in the bed, and he goes over to her, and she doesn't say that Victor told me you made this big move or anything, but she's upset with him because they're back into this really shitty apartment or whatever, and he's trying to console her and telling her it's going to be all right, it'll be fine, and she doesn't want any of it. She's just angry with him and tells him to get out. And so Victor's plan to try and get her to appreciate him has kind of backfired. So he goes back in the other room, and he kind of wakes up Victor, and Victor's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep. He's like, oh, that's okay, kid. And I'm kind of surprised that Penguin had no problem with the fact that he went to Crown Point of all places. Like, yeah, nobody's going to look for you there. But again, his mother, he loves her more. Is that really the safest place to be?
At that point, it's just like, nobody will think to look here. And you going back to your earlier point, he could leave town, go somewhere else. But sometimes you would think it would be smart for Oz to leave town for good after pretty much getting caught red-handed. But they also won't suspect that he's still in the same underbelly.
I don't have a problem with Oz being in there. I meant that I thought he'd be upset that Victor thought that would be a safe place for his mother.
Yeah, but would you, as Sophia, think to look at Crown Point?
No, but I wouldn't think to look a couple states away or a few states away.
But the plot demands.
Yeah, the plot demands. And
also Crown Point is a staple in comics, so I think that also makes sense.
As is the neighborhood where the Falcone estate is as well.
At one point in Detective Comics Volume 1, issue 807, Bruce Wayne was going to live in Crown Point to solve a murder as one of the citizens of that town, and he once described Crown Point being as dark of a cesspool as Crime Alley. So if that doesn't tell you, if that doesn't tell you something about Crown Point,
well, it certainly looked that way from.
oh yeah.
the aftermath of it, and that was funny too. One of Penguin's guys said, "Well, even though the shrooms are destroyed, well, why don't we could just get some more?" He's like, "What do you mean get some more?" Because they don't realize that Penguin has stolen this idea from Alberto, and that Penguin has no idea where the shipment really came from. It's like, yes, Sophia says they give it to us at Arkham, but she obviously had some type of connection to smuggle it out of Arkham because they were still in the Arkham bags.
Mhm.
But Penguin doesn't have that connection, so he's like, "Yeah, we can't get more of this shit." So they're sitting there with Victor talking, and Victor's like, "Your mom said something that this is just like a place you guys used to be." And he's like, "Yeah, 2 bedrooms up or something, like a 2 bedroom floor or something like that. Another place that was just as run down." And he tells Victor that, yeah, he kind of came from nothing. And, after my brothers, and he's having a hard time talking about it. And Victor's like, "What happened to him?" And Penguin's like, "The city." He's like, "The city consumed them and I could do nothing to save them. I was too weak." And so that again plays into the fact that we see Penguin throughout this series as being like, it began when Falcone mentions it at the end of the movie when he's like, "Oh, you're a big man now, Oz, because to me, you're just kind of a gimp in an empty suit." And we've seen all that disrespect he receives throughout this series from the other Falcones, and how he wouldn't even sit in the disabled seat on the train because he doesn't want people thinking of him that way, and that he does have significant disability with his leg or his feet. And so that also, hearing that he wasn't able to save his brothers, it's like, yeah, we don't need to know the specifics, but we get the idea that obviously works psychologically, does some damage as well.
Yep, the psychology of a Batman villain.
Yeah, and he's just really, it's like, I failed my brothers, but I'm not, and everybody thinks I'm a joke, but I'm not going to fail my mother, and I'm going to do something to earn her respect and his own self-respect as well.
Writing, people, this is how you write a character.
Yes.
God dang it.
And while Penguin's telling this story, he's walking around the apartment and he comes upon this jar of trolley tokens. And he gets this idea and he looks and he sees his mom is asleep and he's like, "Come on, kid, I got an idea." So they walk down to this old trolley station and this kind of hip music starts playing as he tears down the plywood covering the entrance and he breaks the door open. And they go down into this old abandoned trolley station and the hip music is still playing. And Penguin finds a generator and he cranks it up and the lights turn on in there. And he's like, "Yeah, it's really hot and humid in there. You know what that's good for?" And Victor's like, "Mushrooms?" And he's like, "Yeah, kid, welcome to our new base of operations." and that's where the episode ends.
I like this episode.
Yeah.
I like the writing here was a big improvement from the previous episode. I think the previous episode we're gonna call it as like a bit of a trip, like somebody tripped on their own on their own expectations of what they wanted to do with the previous episode. But in this episode, I'm like, all right, we're back in business, people. I like how in this episode, a couple of things that I wanted to point out. The building where they were staying that was condemned, they called it the zoo. And I was looking online and I'm like, huh, interesting. The Penguin Zoo. And then other people were kind of pointing out online that they're wondering if it's a reference to Batman Returns, where the Penguin has his base of operations.
Oh, for sure.
In the Gotham's old zoo, specifically the lair within the Arctic world. Granted, there's no Arctic world, but they do go deep underground, so it fits as a reference, whether it's intended or not. Like, I can believe that being a reference. I have to really, really pay attention to it if that's the kind of reference they're going for. The other thing I like is now the second time that Oz has brought up Rex Calabrese, the lion, as the previous gang leader that was pretty much pushed out by the Falcons back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about, how Rex had a gold Cadillac with white leather seats, and he referred to it as Rex's chariot. And that kind of makes sense why Oz's car is that specific looking, because he basically was inspired by how Rex carried himself around town. So that's another good reference to comic book lore. And now that they brought it up a second time, in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know what Matt Reeves' plan is going to be for Selina, but in the current continuity, Selina Kyle is Rex's daughter. She's a Calabrese. So and she was a crime lord during a specific run, and she had some run-ins with the Batman once she took over her family's base of operations. While I don't think this is going to happen in the movies, I would not be surprised if there's a reference at some point.
Well, they did establish that Carmine is her father.
No, I'm just saying that they could if they wanted to. I'm not saying they will, but I like that with recent comic book runs that we've now mentioned Rex twice, and I'm like, you know who else is a Calabrese? And last thing I wanted to mention, you talked about Squid, and there have been, a couple versions of the character. I know the first character showed up in Detective Comics 497 back in 1980. There was a second version in 1982, and there was a version that's an alien. And
I read about that. That was weird.
Yeah, he shows up in Dial H #4, which is one of those issues where you really have to like zany, weird shit to get into it. Mm-hmm. But all we have here is a jock, basically.
Yeah, and according to Victor, he's Squid's in charge of the drops operation in Crown Point.
Yeah.
So that technically is a big deal because that's a big area.
It is, and again, him being there and what we know now, again, they're teasing something, and it's gonna happen. I'm already playing it in my head, and it can only end in one way.
Right, and now that Nadia and Taj are dead, and that Sophia and Salvatore are talking about this allegiance, it's like, well, the Maronis also still have in their possession the Falcone drop shipment that was supposed to be moved to Robbinsville. So that I take it that's going to come back into play. That will be Salvatore's, I think, contribution to this New Day co-op. Not that I think he's going to trust Sophia too much.
No.
I wonder if because the fact that they already teased that they were going to kill him and he survived, that makes me think that maybe he'll be around to the end of the season. Maybe he'll be the one to kill Sophia. Because I have a hard time believing that Sophia is going to be around for the sequel, because this is a show that kind of, it didn't seem to be in, like, because Reeves has said from the beginning that he has planned out like a trilogy. He's already had that in mind. Mm-hmm. And this show kind of came about from the positive reception of Colin Farrell as the Penguin in the movie. And so I don't think Sophia figured into the plans for the Batman Part 2. So my assumption is that she's not going to make it out of the season. And I'm wondering if it's going to be Salvatore that does it. Because now that he's survived, he obviously has to contribute something significant.
You don't get Clancy Brown to play him unless you're going to really pop.
Yeah, because he hasn't really gotten to do anything. Because he mentioned in a little behind-the-scenes vignette that, Salvatore's kind of not the sharpest tool in the shed. He does, listen to his wife all the time, lets her kind of call the shots a lot of the time. But now that he's, unhinged and just really enraged, we're going to see where that goes.
I don't blame him. I mean, I don't.
Oh, yeah, and now we got to.
I don't give it's about him, but I also don't blame the vengeance that's coming out of him.
Oh yeah, and now we got this Squid guy we're gonna have to worry about, which is something that Victor should have told Penguin immediately. He's like, "Oh, by the way, they're, But
again, it's within Victor's character, so it's one of those things." What else was I gonna say?
I'm surprised that he found his courage as quickly as he did to be very assertive. He's like, "No, I want this,"
Well, that's a firecracker moment. They put him up his ass, and he finally woke the fuck up. And hey, you got to do something, man.
No.
But considering how involved Matt Reeves was in the development, we pretty much already know. At least he already knows where it's going to go. So I also doubt it's going to translate into the movies. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a finite, amount for these characters. It's just a matter of who's going to come out on top, which we already know who. It's just the how, the why, and the when.
I expect the Penguin to be the new mob boss in Gotham by the end of the season, and he'll be running the Iceberg Lounge, because I can't picture Sophia surviving into the Batman Part 2 and being like a second banana villain. It's like, no. It's going to be Penguin, and especially since most of these other characters from the comics they only just introduced in this TV show as opposed to the movie. And like they said, that you don't have to watch the Penguin to understand the Batman Part 2, because at the end of Batman Part 1, you have Batman giving his ending narration where he says that things are going to get bad. There's going to be a power grab, and the camera's lingering on Penguin. So we know that he's going to. It's an expectation that you could skip the series, watch right from Part 1 to Part 2, and he'll be in charge, because that was kind of already set up. So I don't think
Yeah, and even if for whatever reason people don't know that that's what the implication was, and they still don't watch the TV show, I wouldn't be surprised if there is if Oz comes back for the sequel as a secondary character. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a line or two. I was like, oh yeah, after the whole thing, whatever, I took over.
They kind of implied that he was going to have a bigger role in the sequel because they kept telling people, oh, he doesn't have much screen time in the first one, which was kind of a lie. He had a lot of screen time, but it felt like the way they were saying that is if, oh, you'll see more of him in the coming movies, but not so much in the first one. So I'm expecting him to have a bigger role, and like in the modern comics where he's like he and Batman have this kind of tolerance.
They have a relationship of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, like Batman's not going to need to fight his way into the iceberg lounge to talk to him next time. He's not going to need to rough him up. He can go in there and maybe sneak in through the roof or something. And
yeah, we can have like a classic Batman moment where the lights turn on and boom, Batman's right there in his suite, and he's like, "Yeah, don't you ever knock." Like I can totally see a joke coming about where every time Penguin thinks he's about to walk into his office and just continue his diddle daddle, all of a sudden Batman is there. I'm just, Jesus Christ, don't you send a message or something? I expect that to happen at some point.
And
what can I do for you, Batman? Yeah, again, it is within parameters that whenever Batman needs to know what's happening and he can't find out with what he has available, who's going to know what's happening in the underbelly? Penguin.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he, depending, because we got 3 episodes left?
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if he runs the iceberg lounge. I wouldn't be surprised if he uses what was the name of the under basement 30 below?
44 below.
44 below. I wouldn't be surprised if 44 below is where he has his, his other base of operations, his other businesses, but he keeps growing the shrooms. If he still has them at the end of the series, he keeps growing the shrooms in Crown Point because no one's going to suspect he's got drugs in that part of town. It's like you have to be stupid to be operating there.
Yeah, unless Squid finds out about it and does something.
No, yeah, I'm sure Squid's going to find out. I'm just saying that if by the end of this series, if he does still keep that abandoned train station for where he's growing it, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a tunnel that leads from that place to 44 below.
Yeah. Ash says, "Hey guys, sorry I can't stay long, but it's late, but wanted to come say hi." Well, thanks for coming, Ash D. Yeah, we have a kind of a soul roller tonight. And I also like the idea that Penguin's base is in the abandoned trolley station, just like Batman's Batcave is in the abandoned train station or subway station.
Yeah.
Ash follows up saying, "This episode was great. I loved the ending and how it shows how smart and prepared Penguin was." Yeah, it was because I was kind of wondering, like when he's rummaging around the apartment, it's like, but then again, it's not his apartment, so it's not like he was looking for the token. He just kind of stumbled across it.
Yeah.
But I did like that Penguin felt very much on the rocks in this episode. Like things weren't. It's like he pulled off some baller moves, but things didn't really go his way as much as he would have liked. And we're seeing him almost a bit panicky. So I like that. I expect things to get worse before they get better for him.
I mean, considering he almost got murdered by Nadia recently, he's kind of like still feeling the after effects of Jesus Christ. I almost lost my neck here.
Yeah. He initially brushed that off pretty easily, but then it's like he was so much more angry about the fact that his girlfriend didn't want to come with him.
Hey, priorities, am I right?
Yeah. Ash says, "True, he wasn't expecting Sal to live, not at all." And it's like, yeah, Mikey, you're gonna jump somebody that big of a guy as Sal, you got to go for the jugular, man. I mean,
yeah,
or the femoral artery in the leg.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where, I mean, it makes sense. Every single time somebody puts a hit on someone that's in jail, the only way it's ever going to not attract more attention than it will be is by shanking them in the abdominal area like it would normally happen.
Yeah.
But at least Sal controlled himself and didn't put a smile on his face.
Yeah. And I do like also that you can definitely see the difference between Salvatore and Carmine, in that Carmine obviously doesn't give two fucks about his family. But Salvatore obviously really does, because he was very, depressed and shaken by his wife and son's death. Whereas I'd imagine if Carmine were still around, he wouldn't care about Alberto getting shot. He might want to find out who did it, but I mean, I don't think he would much care.
Well, yeah, he's gonna want his pound of flesh, but at the same time, oh well, I can always have another one.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't, but he can.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if I brought this up in the last episode, but yeah, Mark Strong, never put on a costume like that ever again. It does not fit you.
Yeah, it doesn't. I didn't care for
Like,
that.
I really, really think they should have brought John back, even if for a weekend, because that's the kind of scene that shouldn't take more than 3 days to film.
Right, and it's not like you need to. People are like, "Oh, we don't want to use the de-aging crap." It's like you don't need to do the damn digital de-age. Back in the day, there's this thing called makeup. You could just dye his hair black and just put the makeup and the skin cream on to make him look.
And the look that they gave John Turturro for this version of Carmine fits him so well that when you see it on Mark Strong, it looks like he's just doing cosplay.
Yeah, it didn't look good, especially with the glasses and everything. I didn't buy it. Ash said Sophia's speech was amazing, and that actress is so good. Yes.
Yeah. Again, her acting and her facial expressions is what's carrying her performance.
And he follows up saying, "Throwing the money in blood, literally blood money."
Also, it kind of shows just how much
It's great.
Henchmen don't give a shit where the money comes from as long as they get paid.
Oh yeah, and none of them. You could tell the guys, they were kind of shaken initially without trying to verbally express it when she killed Johnny Vitti, but they didn't care because she's like giving them all this money.
Although I don't know how you're gonna be able to spend it when it's already dirty with blood. Like, you're gonna clean that shit. Oh, I'm sorry, it was grape juice.
And I wonder if we're gonna see that dirty cop again that she went to, if she's gonna try and call any favors from him again.
We probably will. Like, I don't suspect him leaving. And I also expect to see the chief come back.
Yeah, because he's obviously still suspicious of her. So that's, I mean,
I don't know. Do you think the chief will make it into the sequel, or will this be his only appearance moving forward?
I don't know. I mean, I expect to see him again in the series, but that's a good question.
Movies, though, will we see him back in the movie? Here's the thing: I better see Officer Martinez in the Batman Part 2. That's non-negotiable. But will the chief come back? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, because I expect that the mayor-elect is going to promote Gordon after he saved her life and was the only guy in the department who, only high-ranking guy in the department who wasn't really corrupt. But
exactly.
So maybe because if that chief of police turns out to not be on the take, and maybe he's just a hard ass, and maybe he'll still be around if he survives the season.
Yeah. Also, if it kind of will be almost a plot hole, and I know we talked about Crown Point to death here at this point, but it would be kind of a plot hole if we really want to show that the new mayor wants to make a change in Gotham and work with Bruce Wayne and his finances in order to help rebuild the city, then Crown Point can't remain Crown Point for long.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if we have a No Man's Land scenario Part 2 and Crown Point becomes a setting in the future sequel movies.
Yeah, Ash says exactly. That's why she gave him the money, and the whole point of her speech. She knows she hired hands can and will jump ship, but if you inspire loyalty, you have more power. That is very true, especially since she gives them more money. But yeah, the thing about Crown Point is I think that's also going to play into people's expectations that, given the aftermath of this flood and everything, even though we're not seeing a ton of water everywhere, like again, Crown Point didn't look like it had flood damage, supposedly did, but Gotham will probably be in for a long, harsher winter.
Yeah, and if it plays with how art imitating life, with all these hurricanes happening lately, and a lot of arguments about whether some resources are being given out or not, and then it'll be political and stuff like that. We even saw in this episode some political ads of people already starting to challenge the new mayor-elect at this point. So it's one of those things where it's just like we want to start rebuilding, but then there's always going to be red tape. and it's going to happen. I swear to God, it's going to happen. And that's going to be one of the situations where Bruce Wayne is going to have to be like, well, Bruce Wayne can't do it, but maybe the Batman can.
Yes.
So there's a lot of potential here where it might not all happen in the movies, but it might happen with another maxi series.
And they also said that when the Batman Part 2 begins, Batman's already going to be in the midst of another investigation, whatever the primary investigation of the sequel will be.
And I would love, and I know I brought this up as a potential spinoff. I would love to see a Gotham City Hall series where it deals with the politics and bring back the actress who plays the mayor and make her the lead, and how she has to pretty much navigate the political fallout and what it means to run a city like Gotham. And then, fuck it, give me a Gotham Central show. Give me Gotham PD. Give me a Law and Order Sopranos style Gotham Central.
Ash says, I wonder how the shrooms will fare in the harsh winter. Will it be warm enough in the trolley area? That's a good question.
I think it would if they're able to kind of like any other farming situation. If you control the temperatures, if you control the humidity levels, if he pretty much puts a lot of money into that part that he wants to use to grow the mushrooms, it can be done. Like, you can kind of look as an example the streaming series on Netflix that is basically a spin-off of the movie of the same name, The Gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
That the movie was with Matthew McConaughey, but the TV show is with Toby Kebbell, I believe, unless I'm mistaking the name of the lead actor. But they grow marijuana underground, and it's winter in London, but in the basement where they're growing the marijuana, it's pretty much a moisture farm down there.
True, he can add heating. I do think that the shrooms will play into Penguin's power, because they haven't really done much with them yet to just have them get all destroyed, say by Squid or whatever. Unless that's going to be part of it, like Penguin losing everything at the end of the season and just making a baller move to take over for the drops business.
And also, there's always another new drug on the market, so
yeah,
the shrooms might be a placeholder because it's going to be replacing the acid drops that were popular in the first Batman movie. So the shrooms might be a means to an end, because he just really needs to have a foothold on the market.
DJ Play Nice says, not colder than mid-60s, and Boomer's pot does better with cooler temps.
I wouldn't know.
But yeah,
a review of episode 5, Homecoming, and boy was it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now that back to Crown Point, back to his roots, and in more ways than one.
Yep.
Well,
you know what would be fun? You know what would be fun? I know it's not going to happen, but you know how a lot of people are saying that where's Batman? Where's Batman?
Mm-hmm.
In a perfect world, if I had any control over the development of this show, you know what would be a great way of getting around that? Introduce Matches Malone.
Mm.
Matches Malone is an undercover alias that Bruce Wayne uses whenever he doesn't want to use the Bat persona to look into something. He uses the fake name Matches Malone, and Matches Malone has connections and access to every single corner of the underbelly of Gotham, and people just know Matches Malone as that guy, the guy who just knows where everything happens.
That's funny. Matches Malone. Yeah, that's
exactly. It is such a comic book deep cut kind of a disguise that people who know.
I'm so excited for Sunday night, says Ash. And Ash says, I like it without Batman, to be honest. I like seeing the villain stories and arcs like we always know Batman's side of every story. True, we do get more perspective from the other characters in this type of show.
Yeah, but again, the Matches Malone is one of those things where it's just like, I mean, it's technically Bruce. He's just in disguise.
Yeah,
and nobody was suspected. That's the beauty of it.
I also wonder if the triads are going to show up again, because Penguin made that deal with them and everything, and I guess Nadia was going to.
I wouldn't be surprised if there is a war happening somewhere at some point. A lot of guns are going to be going off.
unless they team up or something, because the Maronis and the Falcones are going to be coming for Oz. So
yeah,
we'll see where that goes. Because Vangé already got a look at the the Bliss, and he liked it, so he's not going to want to lose that. So
do you think I know obviously he wouldn't go back to his apartment because they would be putting people there to see if he would come back. Do you think we will see that not bulletproof, like that vault room come back again in some way, or is that the last we're ever going to see it?
I mean, unless Penguin off screen cleaned out the other safe deposit boxes in there before he went to Crown Point. Because you're right, it does stand to reason that they would search his house or have people there.
Yeah, it just feels like there is a narrative plot that they can use that vault room for.
Right, because it seems like, man, he's got all those boxes there for something. Like there's something else in there, and one of them he had the pictures of Johnny Vitti, which mean nothing now. And so it's like, what are in the other ones,
Yeah.
So he might be able to sneak back in or send somebody like Victor in to go and get it.
Yeah, and then all hell breaks loose.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's our review for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for those who were able to join. We will be back next week, whether it's on a Tuesday, on a Monday, or whenever the crow flies.
That's true, yes. So thanks for being here, Ash and DJ Play Nice and Affinity. Yeah, it's been a fun stream.
We do accept donations. I mean, Kat does have to modify that cane of hers, so
I do. I have to make sure I put a sword.
It ain't cheap. It ain't cheap.
Have a great one, guys. Yeah, thank you, Ash. All right. So with that, I will. Oh, I have to set the outro video. Set as intro video. Oh. And DJ Play Nice says, y'all be safe, have fun, and take care of your crew and rock. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right.